Good afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday, May 11th, 2022, and it is 3:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that means it is time for Women and Business. First of all, how cool is the new title bumper that Lindsay Salcido made for me? I am so excited to have that. Feels like a real show now. I have like an intro. So that was very unexpected and very sweet of her to do. And it looks awesome. And I'm very proud of it. So thank you for that, Lindsay. That is not, however, as cool as it is the topic of our show for today. Now, I have to say this right up front. This is something I'm pretty passionate about at the moment. Women advocating for themselves, women being activists. I think this is a time that could potentially be very dangerous for women and their rights. And that makes me very nervous. So if I'm very vehement today, if I'm a little passionate about this stuff, it's because I really think it matters. I think it's important. I think what we do in the next couple years, maybe even in the next couple months, will determine the future of women in this country. And if that sounds kind of dramatic and over the top, deal with it, honestly, because I think this is true. I think that freedoms and rights that we thought were ours in perpetuity can be taken away. And we don't like to think that's possible, but it is. And that's a very scary thing. So, and we have a couple people here. The ever-dreaded Facebook user says, "Hey, Christine," and then realized they spelled my name wrong, so they spelled it right. And Cindy says, "Good afternoon. Darn, I missed the intro." Well, it'll be there every week, so you will see it eventually, Cindy. Or it's also on the Women in Business Facebook page, which would be here. And you can go and see it there because I put it up when Lindsay made it for me. So it's very cool, I have to say. But again, not the topic that we're talking about today. And excuse me while I adjust my back pillow here so that I could sit reasonably upright. When we bought this chair, we didn't realize that it was a little deep. So when I bought this chair, whatever it is, apparently there's a mouse in my pocket or something. When I bought the chair, I didn't realize that it was as deep as it is. And if I don't have a pillow behind me, I'm way back like this and it doesn't look like I want it to look to be on camera. So again, more details you didn't really need to know, but hey, it's that kind of day. So let's see. Oh, and Jamie is here. I don't know why it's giving you Facebook user. I can tell you why, because StreamYard likes to do that. But if you go here, StreamYard.com/Facebook, you can give them permission to show your name, and then they might decide to do it or they might not. StreamYard is kind of just that way sometimes. But again, not the point of what we're here to talk about today. What I want to talk about today is female activism, women advocating for themselves, how to do it, where to do it, why to do it, all sorts of things. Because like I said, I think this is a really important time for women and their rights in this country, maybe in the world. And I think for all the progress that we say we've made, and there has been progress, I don't want to negate that there's also a long way that we need to go. And the only way that this happens is if we are diligent in promoting our rights, protecting our rights, protesting when our rights are trampled on. So the 3 Ps: promoting, protecting, and protesting. There you go. 3 Ps: promoting, protecting, protesting. Making our voices heard. And the first thing that I want to talk about is something that I think people forget sometimes or try to make a more recent thing. And that's that women have been activists and women have been protesting and protecting and promoting their rights for centuries. I mean, you can go back to the 1800s with the female suffragettes in England. the suffragettes in the United States that started a little later, and then we got the vote in 1920 here. And it's not just that. There were social activists who were promoting the fact that women needed health care and women needed childcare help. There were people promoting educating women back when that was not a thing that happened. So, female activism and women advocating for their rights is not a new thing. It's been happening for a really long time. I think and even, I have to say this, even women taking flack for promoting their rights and protesting that they aren't getting the rights they think they should have, has been taking flack for a long time too. So that's nothing new. But women organizing, women coming together, women working in groups and teams and individually to get their voices heard, to stand up for what they think is right, to promote the fact that they should have rights. There should be fair pay. They should have the right to vote. They should have a say in the government of their country. They should have childcare, and they should have health care, and they should be able to have a baby safely. And they should have contraception and all these different things that women have protested over the years. And, they should have equal rights, which, don't get me started on the fact that the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, came out in the 70s, and 50 odd years later, it still hasn't passed, which is sad. But women have been doing this sort of thing for a very long time. Now, like I said, they've been taking flack for it. If you ever read the history of the women's suffrage movement in England, it's brutal. There were women who went on hunger strikes and were force-fed. There were women who were beaten. They were jailed consistently. And granted, the female suffragettes in England had a more violent kind of take on how to protest and did some things that maybe were a little on the not so great side, but at the same time, I understand it was because of years of frustration of trying to get the vote, trying to get this to happen, trying to get people to listen to them, and nobody was. And so their methods stepped up. They started blowing up mailboxes. They started breaking windows. They started trying to get arrested en masse so they could overload the justice system. It was a rough thing. And now the women in the United States, they had some jailings. There were some things. The suffragettes in the US were maybe a little less violent than the ones in England, but they learned a lot of their techniques from the women in England because the women in England had been doing it longer and first. So, what this all leads to is this is not a new thing. We didn't just sit up this morning and go, oh, we need to be activists for ourselves. We need to advocate for ourselves. This has been happening for a really long time. There's a really long-standing tradition of women working to secure the rights that they think they deserve. And I think that's an important thing when we start looking at this. Sometimes people talk about the women's marches when Trump was elected or the other stuff that happened as, oh, this is a new thing. It's like, no, this is not a new thing. This wasn't a new thing in the 70s. It wasn't a new thing in the 20s. It wasn't a new thing in the 1860s. Women have been doing this for a very long time. It's sad that they've had to keep doing this and keep doing it about the same subjects for so long. But if you decide that you want to be an advocate or an activist or whatever you want to call it, a protester, you're following in the footsteps of a lot of women who put a lot at risk to advocate, to be active for rights and privileges and protections that they thought they needed. So, read the history of this stuff. The Pankhursts in England, Elva Vanderbilt in the US, who was very active in the female suffrage movement, Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. In the 70s, of course, Gloria Steinem, all those people. I mean, First Lady Betty Ford campaigned for the ERA, which I didn't know until recently, which I think is awesome because she was the wife of a sitting president and she was saying our government needs to be different. I love that. But there's a whole, and I think this is true. It's how we go about it makes a difference. We also need to learn to listen as much as protesting and being an activist. And yes, I think that's true. And that actually is a nice segue to another part of women have been activists for centuries that I want to talk about, which is women have not always worked together well. There is, if you read the history of the women's suffrage movement in America, you will find at certain points in the process, women of color who had also been advocating to get the vote were jettisoned by the white women, basically, because the white women were afraid that if they also were promoting women of color getting the vote, it would turn off people who wanted to, who might otherwise approve. So you have to also be aware that we also have to be allies and advocates for each other. And that historically, women of color have had, women who have are LGBTQ have had an even tougher time than someone who looks like me. And as I have said before, and will probably say again, I am the whitest white woman in America. I understand that. Maybe not in outlook but certainly in skin color. I'm very white. And it stays white because I don't do sun. So we have to be aware of that too. And I think Cindy has a good point here. I know you are addressing women's issues, but this falls into anyone wanting to take a stand for something they believe in. I think that's true. And I think more of us should be taking stands for the things that we believe in, because it's important. If you care about something, if you feel that your liberty is being trespassed on, if you feel that your rights are being threatened, if you feel that you should, that there should be parity in wages, or there should be paid childcare or mandated maternity leave or whatever it is, or if you feel that, you come from a place of relative privilege and you want to help people in other countries, women in other countries who don't have those privileges, that's a great thing to do too. There are a lot of reasons why people protest. And I also don't want to, and never would, discount male allies, because there are a lot of men who are protesting for women's rights and on the behalf of women, so to speak. And I think that's an amazing thing too. We can all be allies for each other. I think the big thing is, if you see an injustice, if you see a right that is being trampled or threatened, then you need to take a stand. You need to say something, even if it's unpopular, even if it's going to maybe make certain people in your audience or your customer base or whatever it is not want to do business with you or not want to listen to you anymore. And I want to talk about that a minute, because one of the things that I did recently, last week, is I have a group called Women in Garment Decoration. And I posted in that group about the Supreme Court opinion that had come out, the draft of the Supreme Court opinion that had come out, and the fact that it's very alarming. That Roe could potentially go away is very alarming for a number of reasons that I'm not going to go into here. But the point that I want to make was that I posted about it fully aware that I could end up with excuse my language, but a shitstorm on my hands, that people could be offended, that it could become a debate of pro-life and pro-choice, which is not what I was posting about. That's a whole separate thing. And, it could have been potentially a really hot button thing that could have been very uncomfortable and not productive at all. What happened instead was there was a discussion about the potential for what could happen, about what it all meant, about why it was important, and it was civil, and it was substantive, and it was really everything that I wanted it to be. And I was so proud of the women in the group, because I'm sure there were people who disagreed. And if they did, they apparently just elected to preserve the atmosphere of the group and not get into a fight. And let me say this, if there were people who disagreed, if they had presented their argument civilly, I would have been fine with it. I have no problem with civil disagreement. I understand that there are people who are not going to see things the way that I do. I get that. And I have no problem with somebody expressing an opinion that doesn't agree with mine. What I have a problem with is people who think their opinion is the only opinion, with people who devolve to name calling or stereotyping or accusations because whatever's being said doesn't agree with what they think. I have a problem with that. I will argue, not even argue, I will discuss with someone who has an opposite viewpoint from me all day if we can have a civil discussion. And if there's some, even a glimmer of evidence that, hey, there's an open mind here. So there are civil discussions and civil disagreements are amazing. I think we should have more of those. I wish we hadn't lost the ability to do that. It seems like nowadays when you debate a point or when you express an opinion, what comes back at you is you're wrong, you're bad for what you believe, you're ruining the country, you're, whatever it is. And I'm sorry, not everybody is going to agree all the time. And I can acknowledge that someone can think something different than I think and think it for the same reasons that I think what I think, which is I think my opinion is the way to go forward, to do better, to make a better country, whatever it is. I can totally accept that somebody else could have a totally opposite opinion from me and be working toward the same goals. So I think that's something we need to remember more often, which is you can disagree and still be a good person. You can disagree and still be friends. You can disagree and still work together. You can disagree and talk about why you disagree and not have it devolve into you're a bad person, you're wrong, you should be in jail or whatever it is. You can do that. It's an art that we've kind of lost, but I really hope we get it back because it's an important one. And I think we need to have these discussions. And here's a good comment. We have to learn to respect others' viewpoints and opinions because I am sure we have a different view on Roe. The government wants us divided, and as women, we tend to be more petty. We need to stop judging and learn to see the common ground. I will agree with most of that. I'm not sure women tend to be more petty. I think women are taught as a fighting stance to do that sometimes, but the rest of it I like. And I think, yes, not judging and trying to find the common ground would help us immensely. If we can, even if it's just acknowledging, okay, I don't agree with anything that you're saying, but I will acknowledge that you are saying it because you want the best for women or this country or whatever. And that's what I want. So we have common ground. We do disagree on how to accomplish our aims, but we do have the common ground of wanting good for the country or women or whatever. And if we can start focusing on that, then maybe we figure out a compromise that works instead of vilifying everybody who doesn't toe the same party line that we toe. So women have been activists for centuries. We've been doing this for a long time. We've been fighting some of the same fights for a long time, which is really sad. And don't get me started on that. But I think that's the place that I wanted to start, is that this is not a new thing. This is something that we've been doing for a long time. I like this too. I can disagree and still have a relationship with a person because it's not about what we disagree about, but more about what we can agree upon. Ooh, I love that so much. And I think that's true. And I think where we go wrong a lot of the time is we focus on what we don't agree on. And we get so caught up in where we're differing that we don't ever come to the realization that, hey, maybe our differences aren't as big as we think they are. So I love that really a lot. And I think the other reason that women need to be protesting, promoting, and preserving their rights, and I forgot my 3 Ps, I should have written them down, but we understand the issues we face. And that's not to say that men don't. It's not to say that men can't learn about the issues that we face, but we get it because we live it. We live the being, I mean, probably, well, I won't say almost everyone, but I'm betting a large portion of women have had the pregnancy scare issue at some time in their life, or the single mom issues, or the fact when you find out that you're doing the same work or more work and you're making less than your male counterparts, or just, a million little things that can happen. We get it. We understand it. We understand the issues because we're in them, because we're women. And that makes us potent warriors for our rights because we have stories to tell. I mean, when Me Too came out, and whatever you think about Me Too, and I think there were good aspects of Me Too, I think there were bad aspects of Me Too. But when that came out and all of these women started telling their stories, and as more and more women came forward, you heard more and more stories, and you realized that a lot of what we had heard, which was, oh, this is an isolated problem, or this is one bad guy, was actually systemic in a lot of corporate cultures, in a lot of industry cultures. And until you talk about it, until you call it out and lay it on the carpet and put it in the light and say, this is a problem, it doesn't happen. It doesn't get fixed. It keeps happening. And I'm speaking as someone who brought to light my own story. This is hard. They do not make it easy. There is nobody who comes up to you and says, oh, you poor thing, please let us handle this in the most sensitive and wonderful manner. Most of what you'll get will be, why are you talking about this? Do you really want to do this? They will not make it easy or comfortable for you. That's sad because a woman who is harmed sexually or financially or in any way should be treated with respect and dignity. Doesn't happen. That sucks, and that's a whole other show. And Cindy has a good point here. In the last few years, it's been really sad. Families and friends breaking up because of politics. I see it everywhere. Everyone is going to have a different idea on issues. Get along. And I think there's some truth to that. I mean, we all have different opinions. And, the problem is that some people cling to their opinions so hard and just assume that their way is the right way. And if you deviate from what they believe in any way, then you're morally bankrupt or corrupt or whatever it is, or you're stupid. Ugh. It's just not good. We need to learn to get over that. We need to start looking for the common ground. So, women understand the issues they face. Women have been activists for centuries. So if you want to be an activist, how do you do it? Okay, easy one. Use your voice. Start talking about it. Start talking about it with your friends. Start talking about it with your family. Start talking about it on social media, whatever the issue. Start talking about it with your legislative officials. Whatever and wherever you can, use your voice. You have a voice. You have this great instrument that you can use to make your views known. And for a lot of women, it's, I don't like conflict, or I don't want to piss off my customers, or I don't want to piss off my family or my friends or whatever it is. And I get that. It's uncomfortable when people don't agree with you. It's uncomfortable when they tell you that they don't like you because you're wrong. It's uncomfortable when people call you stupid or a liar or whatever it is. It's not fun. But here's the thing. And I know this from experience. So I spent a lot of years being quiet because I was scared, because I wanted people to love me, because I wanted to fit in, because of a number of reasons that were mostly pathetic and honestly I'm angry about now a little bit. But what I learned from this is when I didn't speak up for myself, when I didn't advocate for the things that I thought were important, it didn't make anybody love me anymore. It didn't make people treat me any better. Certainly didn't make me feel better. And I didn't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, which was to feel safe, because I wasn't speaking up for myself and I was letting people walk on me. And it was wrong and it was stupid. And I wish I hadn't done it now. But we learn and we grow. And now I speak up. And granted, here I am sitting here talking to this camera, and maybe 10 people in the world ever see this. Okay. It's 10 more people than would have seen it if I hadn't done it. And maybe it sparks somebody else who says something. And maybe that person sparks somebody else who says something. And it becomes a chain. You never know. But you have a voice. And if you don't speak up, then you're wasting one of your most valuable resources, honestly. And it took me a really, really long time to learn this. And yes, pick your battles is a valid piece of advice. And yes, sometimes you just go, I can't do that. I don't need the conflict. I get that. That's completely understandable too. And yes, Cindy says respect. That is the word I was looking for. And yes, respecting each other's viewpoints is very important, but also respecting each other's voices. If you have a platform, if you are someone that other people listen to, use your own voice, but also amplify other people's voices. If you have the ability, and if you have any kind of notoriety, or if people are likely to listen to you for any reason, use your platform to help other people be heard. Because there are a lot of stories out there, and there are a lot of people advocating to change things and to fix things. And they have good reasons why they're doing that. And they have good stories to tell about why it matters. So use your voice and use your platform. And don't, and people say, I don't have a platform. Nobody listens to me. I don't have a platform. Well, if you don't have a platform, get one. Simple as that. Nowadays, honestly, look what I'm doing here. This is me spending a couple $100 a year to buy a streaming service. And I bought a camera, and I have lights, and I have internet, and I do this every week. And hopefully it does some good. Now, I don't know. I mean, I've heard from people that they like the show and they think that it does good things, but I'm not Oprah, which thank heavens, because don't get me started on that. But I'm just me. I'm one voice in the wilderness going, this is right, this isn't right, and this is kind of scary, and we need to do something about this. And here's how you can do something about this. I'm using my voice. And I keep using it. I've been using it for a couple years now. And not everybody loves it. Not everybody thinks it's the thing I should be doing. But I'm not really concerned about that. I'm just concerned about the fact that there are things that alarm me and I want to sleep at night. So I need to tell people. Think of me as Paul Revere for women's rights, or, except I can't ride a horse. So maybe that's not the best analogy, but you understand what I'm saying. I'm sounding an alarm. I'm saying these things are scary and we need to look at them and we need to figure out what to do about them. And part of how we do that is by using our voices, which means talking to people in groups or singularly about these things and what they mean. It means getting educated. It means learning. It means figuring things out. It also means, and this is the tough part sometimes, reading viewpoints that you don't agree with, or listening to viewpoints that you don't agree with, finding out what people who don't agree with you are saying and what they think. Because part of using your voice is being able to have a discussion, or if you like, an argument effectively. The only way you can argue effectively is if you understand your position and you understand the positions of those who don't agree with you. It's way more work, I'm not going to lie, and it's not always fun, because sometimes you'll be reading or listening to something and you just want to tear up whatever you're reading or punch the screen, because whatever the thing is that you're perusing is just so antithetical to everything that you believe in that you just hate it. But you still need to read it. You still need to listen. You still need to try to find the common ground. And, you know, like I said about talking about your traumas, it is not easy. It's not going to be comfortable all the time. And if you're not used to using your voice, if you're not used to advocating for yourself, it's going to be downright scary. But you still should do it, because it's important, because this matters. Because if we don't do this, we may not have the ability to do this. And yes, I understand that sounds apocalyptic, and it may sound like I'm exaggerating. I don't think I am. I really don't. I think if it's like muscles, if you don't use your muscles regularly, they atrophy, and then pretty soon you're being wheeled around in a wheelchair. If you don't use your voice, if you don't exercise your rights, if you don't advocate, then you lose the ability to do that. And it doesn't take much. And it can be very subtle and very silent. So we need to be aware of this stuff. I say in the Women in Business group all the time, this shit matters. And it does. This matters a lot. And so we need to speak up about it, and we need to talk about it, and we need to have discussions about it. I mean, honestly, I would really love to have a discussion at a trade show, or to have a discussion online or whatever. And that's something I may try to get together. Have people come and talk about issues. That would probably be a whole separate podcast, but I'm willing to do it because I think it's important. Use your voice, people. It's important. The other thing we need to do, and this also harkens back a little bit to what I was talking about earlier when American women did not have the vote yet and were advocating and agitating to get the vote. And the white women in the organizations that were agitating to get the vote put the women of color in a boat and kind of shoved them offshore, like, don't look at them, because they were afraid that if they advocated and supported the women of color's efforts, that they would harm the ability of white women to get the vote. Sad but true. So support one another. And support one another, again, in amplifying each other's voices, in advocating for each other, in donating to each other's products, donating to each other's projects or causes that people support, in helping to amplify each other's voices, all this kind of stuff. One of the things that has been discovered is that if women work together, they can become a force that is exponentially larger than one woman alone. And particularly in countries that are disadvantaged, if women in a village get together, if women in become a collective of some kind, then they can do a lot more than each woman working individually. So this is an important thing. And this is what groups like Women in Garment Decoration were formed to do, which is, let's be together and hear each other's problems and celebrate each other's successes and support each other's issues and donate to each other's causes and do all the things that we need to do to make sure that every woman gets heard and every woman feels like she has people behind her. And again, this is something that is pretty simple to do. And you can do it if you're an ally. A male ally can do this, or women can do it for each other. And I'm not going to lie, women have been culturally preconditioned or taught to be competitive, whether it's competitive for the guy you're going to marry, or competitive to be the prettiest, or competitive to be whatever it is. We're kind of taught to be competitive. And at the same time, there's also this whole cultural mythology of, female friendships and women being nurturing and all this stuff. So we need to learn how to address all of this and kill the myths, whatever they are, and be nurturing for each other and be supportive of each other and work together for a common goal, and not necessarily worry about who has precedence or who's getting what or who's doing the most work or whatever it is. And that's a tough thing sometimes, because I think the other thing that women get taught a lot is that resources are scarce. That if she gets hers, then I'm not going to get mine, which, I'm sorry, is complete bullshit. It really is, because there's enough for everyone. And what is meant to be yours will come to you. And sometimes that's tough to accept, because you might want something that maybe isn't necessarily in your life path. It happens. But don't be, I hate the word jealous. It's not the word I want, but it's the only word I can think of. Don't be jealous of what other women have. Just be ready and open and advocating for what's yours and what you want. And if you want something, work for it. If you want something, speak up. If you want something, ask other people to support you as you try to go for whatever that thing is. There's a lot of nuances in the support one another thing. And I think it's more complicated than people want it to be, and also more simple than people want it to be. There's a lot of cultural crap mixed in with how women interact. Like I said, there's the whole idea that there's scarcity. There's a whole idea that there's tokenism, or there's the token woman who gets in. There's the whole idea of wanting to be the token woman or the one who made it, and maybe not being comfortable with other women being good at what they do or being competitive or whatever it is. And there's the whole theory that women are competitive with each other. There's a whole lot of just junk that's around the idea of how women are supposed to interact. So I just say, let's support each other. And that means helping to amplify each other's voices. That means supporting each other's causes. That means offering a shoulder when somebody's having a bad day. That means disagreeing respectfully. All those things are forms of support. That means giving money. That means giving time. It means a whole list, a laundry list of things. So we need to do more of this, and not just in a superficial kind of I'm here for you way, but put your money and your time and your effort where your mouth is, basically. So you can also advocate and be an activist through education. And I think education is so important, because people often don't understand the issues that they pick a side on. And that's a problem. And especially, how do I address this the right way? Okay, I'm just going to go for it. We're very polarized right now. And there is the ability, if you don't make an effort, to have everything that you read, see, consume, talk about, to reinforce the viewpoints that you already have. We know that if you read anything, there's the liberal media and there's the conservative media, and you can probably tell me which television networks and which outlets are on each side. And depending on which viewpoint you espouse, the other side is evil and wrong and spreading disinformation and all this kind of stuff. That's a smokescreen. that's basically getting in the way of learning what people think and learning what people think without the labels, not worrying if it's a conservative viewpoint or a liberal viewpoint, but learning people's stories and learning what people think. And this is a big one, learning the facts. And despite the theories that have gone around that facts don't matter or facts are irrelevant or whatever it is, facts are not irrelevant. Facts are facts. Facts are reality. So learn the facts. Make the effort to learn the facts, because there's a lot of smokescreens out there. There's a lot of disinformation out there. The other side of when I said you can use your voice and the internet is here and it doesn't cost much to set up a stream, is that can also be a bad thing. Anybody who has an axe to grind or a grudge to pursue can set up a stream just like this and look very official and talk about whatever nonsense they want to talk about on either side. And unless you do your due diligence, unless you pay attention, unless you're looking, then you may take them at face value and assume that this is a valid discussion that we're having. So we have to have our due diligence. We have to educate people. We have to inform when we find something that isn't supported by facts, that is some blowhard on either side, that is just spouting their own version of crap. And yeah, it's more work. It's tougher to do. But we need to do it, because educated people, and by educated, I don't mean college educated. I don't necessarily mean school. I mean people who study, people who take the time to read and listen and think critically. And that doesn't have to be an intellectual. That doesn't have to be someone who has multiple degrees. It just has to be someone who's willing to spend the time to learn and who is open-minded enough to accept that people will have viewpoints that are different than their own and is willing to entertain those viewpoints. Like I said, not easy, because it's way, way, way more comfortable to just stay in your bubble, to just stay with the stuff that reinforces what you already believe, and to only talk to the people who think the same way you do, and to assume that everybody who doesn't think what you think is stupid or evil or, a fascist or whatever it is. And that doesn't get you anywhere. If you're labeling people, if you automatically negate a whole category of opinion just because it doesn't agree with what you think, doesn't get you anywhere. So educate other people, educate yourself, keep talking about this stuff and keep learning, keep reading, keep listening, keep trying to understand, and keep getting uncomfortable, because sometimes learning a viewpoint or even acknowledging a viewpoint that you don't like is hard, but it's important, and we need to do this stuff, because if we don't, like I said, we may not be able to. And I hate to even think that, and it's scary to think that, but it's possible. I mean, people have been writing dystopian fiction for years, and it's a little scary how close some of it seems to be getting to reality now. So I don't like that. But anyway, educate people. And before we close today, and this may be a little bit shorter than normal because, again, it's just me being a talking head. And I do promise, for those of you that are tuning in every week to watch me be a talking head, there are guests in the works. I'm trying to get some people booked now. It's just a matter of getting dates settled on. And that's been people are busy. So it's been a little more difficult than I assumed. But before we go today, I do want to talk about some organizations that are doing great work and which you might want to support with your time or your money. So the first one is Runningstart.org. And this is an organization that trains young women to run for office, which I love this really a lot, because I think getting girls when they're young and teaching them how to speak well and to make a valid argument, and even getting them in the mindset that they can run for office, is an amazing thing. So, and they do this, they have boot camps, they have classes, they have programs where girls can learn learn how to create an elevator pitch and learn how to make an argument and learn what's involved in running for office and all that kind of thing. And I think it's an amazing thing for young women to get it's kind of a feeder school for sheshouldrun.org, which I will talk about a little bit later. But I also think just accustoming, that's not even a word. I just think that getting young women accustomed to the idea that they can run for office, that that's a valid thing that women can do, is great. And giving them the tools to be able to run a successful campaign is even greater. So I love this really a lot. So runningstart.org. The Women's Voice Network. This is job training. This is advocating for equal pay. There's a number of things that this organization does. They help women with clothes. They help with resume writing classes, all that kind of stuff. And women who get valid employment, who are making a decent salary, are definitely women who are doing better. And poverty is still a huge issue for women, especially for women of color. So it's something that needs to be addressed. So this organization is helping women get training, get jobs, get wardrobes to go on interviews, do their resumes, all that kind of stuff. So I really like that. Together Women Rise is an advocacy organization, women working together, and they work all over the world. And basically it's about banding together and working on women's issues. And it's another organization that I think is really a good one, and definitely something, if you're interested in supporting organizations that help women, this is another one that would be a good option. Womendeliver.org. This is an organization that focuses on women's health, and this organization also operates worldwide. And for those of you who aren't aware, women's health issues are much more than the issue that we're dealing with in the United States right now, which is abortion. There are also countries where female mortality because of giving birth is huge. There are issues with nutrition. There are issues with prenatal care. There are certainly issues with genital mutilation and, sexual abuse and all that kind of stuff. And this is an organization that deals with all those things. And I mean, if you've never read about the things that women in other countries go through, we have it rough enough in some areas in the US, but in other countries, genital mutilation and infant mortality and mother mortality in healthcare issues and all that kind of stuff, it's awful. So this is an organization that deals with a lot of those issues and is trying to make them better. And I also should say here that we talk about other countries when we talk about infant mortality, and we talk about mothers dying, and we talk about lack of healthcare. That also happens in the US. There are portions of the US where infant mortality is very high, where mothers die proportionately more. And with women of color, this is also a problem. So this is all stuff that needs to be looked at. So if this is an issue that you feel strongly about, check out womendeliver.org. The American Association of University Women has a lot of advocacy I can't even talk anymore. Advocacy programs for women. They also have an activism starter kit under their resource section. That's a huge thing. It gives you a lot of ways to advocate and how to get started. So that's definitely something you should check out. I like a lot of their programs. I believe in Sisterhood Saturday in Women in Garment Decoration. I called out their advocacy kit. I can't say advocacy apparently. And I also will post all of these on the Women in Business Facebook page. So if you see or have heard of any of these that you would like to investigate further, the links will be up on the Women in Business Facebook page later today. And the last one I want to talk about is sheshouldrun.org. I've talked about this one before. It's a great organization that focuses on supporting female candidates who are running and also getting women to run. So giving them the resources to run and supporting those who are running. I love this organization a lot. They have swag, so you can go buy swag. You can just make a straight up donation, whatever you want to do. But I think more women in office is one of the big ways that and I don't know why this pen is here now, but is one of the big ways that we can preserve our rights. It's important. So we need to have more women running for office on the federal, state, and local level. And don't negate what can be done by being on your town council or being mayor of your city or whatever it is. Don't negate those things, because even on a local level, maybe even more on a local level, you can make a huge difference. So sheshouldrun.org, that's an important one. Really, all I wanted to do today, honestly, was talk about why we need to be using our voices and talk about some ways to do that, and talk about why it's a little scary and why if we don't do these things, we may end up not having the ability to do these things. And like I said, I don't want to sound alarmist. I don't want to sound like I think we're living in a dystopia, because I don't at this point. I think we could be, but we're not. I just think it's important. And if I inspire one person to give money to an organization that's doing good work, or to volunteer, or to speak up, or write an essay, or whatever it is, then I feel like this is time well spent. So that's all I'm trying to do. Maybe, honestly, this is just my way of trying to sleep a little better at night, because I feel like we need to be talking about this stuff. And I am aware that, however odd it may be to me, I do have something of a platform, and I think I need to use it responsibly. And honestly, this felt like the way to use it responsibly today. So I'm going to close this out, because I could ramble for another, 20 minutes probably, but that's not going to serve anyone. The links to the organizations that I called out in the show will be listed on the Women and Business Facebook page later today. So if you are interested in checking out any of these organizations, please go over there and check them out. This is important. Shit is important, as I keep saying. And I really hope that maybe I struck a chord with some of you today. And thank you, those of you who have stuck with me to the very end of this. Honestly, I don't know what next week's show is going to be right now. I'm hopeful there'll be a guest. We'll see what happens. If not, it might be me again, but I will try to have an informative and entertaining show for you regardless. Thank you, everybody that sticks with me every week. I appreciate it. I understand listening to me be a talking head may not be the most thrilling thing all the time, but I'm glad that you're here and I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. See you all next Wednesday. Bye.